Member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Madam Speaker, I grew up in a simple home where hard work was just part of our life. My father worked in the forest industry and my mother continues to be a psychiatric nurse. And when the forest industry struggled, our family struggled, but we always worked hard. My family instilled in me the desire to make sure that I always paid my fair share. My parents always said to me, and I've always told my own children, do not complain about paying taxes. That investment goes into the important things like health care, highways, and helping those in need. Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, this is really what we're here to talk about today, paying our fair share, making sure that all people in Canada are paying their part so that we can build a strong country, invest in those things that build our social network, and keep the standard of living balanced in our country. We are here today because every day hardworking people are paying their fair share, even when it hurts. And while these folks are doing their part, some with so much more are finding ways to not pay their part. I would like to thank the NDP finance critic for bringing forward this motion, meant to address systemic inequalities in our fiscal system. Tax evasion, loopholes, shell companies, and tax havens have tools. They are tools to avoid paying taxes. For weeks, KPMG has made headline after headline. And you know what the reality is? Every couple of months we hear a similar story. Creative money peddling accountants finding a way to cheat the system. Millionaires and billionaires finding ways to hide their money. I want to be really clear here. This money is made off the labor of someone. Their profit is at the expense of hardworking people across Canada. This is why ending tax loopholes is so important, and it is something that we must look at seriously because this is about the value of working people. There are so many revelations that sometimes I have the urge to simply not read the articles. It's disheartening when so many people in my riding of North Island Powell River are struggling hard every day. Because these stories just pop up every couple of months, year after year, and we're still waiting for some real solutions. We've all read at some point, you know, creative money peddling accountants finding a new way to cheat by whatever means, pushing countries in a race to the tax bottom or pressuring the government not to take up the fight. Despite this, I still strongly think we cannot give in, and we can slowly and smartly take steps to dismantle these schemes and strengthen our Income Tax Act. This is so important because it is about the hardworking people in Canada that are paying more than their fair share, while rich people, millionaires and billionaires, are hiding their money. I'm so proud that this motion we're debating today offers some very specific examples of what this Parliament should take very seriously moving forward. An example is the recent deal given to clients from KPMG, which facilitated their tax evasion, that freed them from any further civil or criminal prosecution, as well as any penalties or fines. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, in my riding, if people owe just a little bit, they're absolutely paying the penalties and the fines, even when it hurts them to do so. The NDP is calling for a full investigation into the KPMG affair. I think ending penalty-free amnesty deals for individuals suspected of tax evasion, a gift to the wealthy tax evaders and aggressive tax avoiders, should seriously be considered. Enough is enough. Another example is changing the corporate tax rules that allow for the use of shell companies that serve no economic purpose other than to protect the wealth of the ultra-rich. It plays an important role in large-scale money laundering activities. At the heart of the Panama Papers was the law firm Mossack Fonseca, which managed more than 300,000 companies over the years. This is unacceptable. This debate is also a great stepping stone to this year's debate on the budget because of the opportunities and priorities of this budget and what they can do for all of us. Firstly, this is an opportunity for the Finance Minister, by addressing these special credits and loopholes, cost the government more than $100 billion in foregone revenue per year. If even a portion of this sum was recuperated, it could pay for a national pharmacare program, a national child care program, upholding the equal care for First Nations children. We are still in this House waiting to see that amount of money added for these children that are suffering across our country. Secondly, budgets are about priorities. You know, Madam Speaker, in my riding of North Allen Powell River last week, I participated in the coldest night of the year walk. And I was tremendously pleased in our community of Campbell River and across the whole riding in other communities as well. So many came, so many fundraised, because they know the reality of people who don't have a home, that don't have appropriate food, who are struggling every day just to survive. I think it is so important that we remember the people who are paying their fair share, the people that are fighting hard just to survive every single day when we look at what is happening in this country around these tax loopholes and tax evasion. I am very keen to take a very close look at the proposed measures in due time to make sure fairness, including fiscal fairness, is finally taken seriously. Canadians deserve that. Madam Speaker, the Liberals have not taken tax fairness very seriously in the past, and it's time to change that. If you take a step back for a moment, you will see in this House two parties defending their sad record. They will share vast amounts of numbers like the amount invested in the Canada Revenue Agency, recapturing funds, along with many fairy tales. But Canadians aren't fooled by these smokescreens. They know that lost revenue are misguided priorities, and some are discarded promises as well. One of these broken promises is to do with the stock option deduction. After promising to fully tax individual stock options, gains exceeding $100,000 during the last election campaign, the Liberals announced they would leave it untouched after they formed government. Madam Speaker, I'm just going to say this again. Hardworking Canadians in this country are paying their fair share every single day. It only is reasonable for us to hold to account those who are not paying their fair share. We now learn of intense lobbying by Bay Street CEOs who benefit greatly from this measure to keep the loophole open. At some point, we have to make the decision, and I hope to see the Liberal government actually take steps towards making sure that hardworking Canadians pay their fair share, but they make sure that we see the CEOs of these companies paying their fair share as well. This loophole benefits the ultra-rich, yet successive Liberal and Conservative governments have given up billions of dollars in tax revenue over the past 3 decades due to this loophole. The Liberals' flip-flop on the stock option loophole shows the influence that powerful inside lobbyists have on this government's policies. Madam Speaker, I have to tell you, the people that have influence on my priorities are the people that I serve of North Allen Powell River, people that work really hard every day, that have had to change or face the changes of a changing economy, looking at resource-based economy, watching as forest companies are struggling, watching our trees be shipped out of our riding. We want to see more of those good-paying jobs in our community, and we want to make sure that we have not paying over our fair share when these other people are not paying what they should be. This is the government's systemic acceptance of tax fraudsters and their entities, enabling them to cheat the system. Our system allows every citizen to contribute equitably to the public services and social programs. If they don't, every Canadian is cheated. Oxfam blamed Taxhaven in its 2016 annual report on income inequality for much of the widening gap between the rich and the poor. Canadians want better health care, community infrastructure, good jobs, and for us to tackle climate change. Instead, the Liberals are maintaining tax loopholes that benefit Canada's wealthiest while leaving most Canadians behind. Seniors are making choices between heat medication and housing. Families can't afford daycare or even the toonie it takes to send their kid to participate in a school trip. It's time that everyone pay their fair share and stop leaving the burden on the people who work the hardest and struggle the most. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And like other New Democrats that have spoken, all I can do is just reinforce that, in fact, what we have seen since we have been in government, the Liberal Party took government back in October of 2015, is the fact that the number one priority has been Canada's middle class and those aspiring to be a part of it, and those are the individuals that are influencing the government's policy today. Whether the NDP want to believe it or not, quite frankly, at this point is somewhat irrelevant, because I believe that Canadians understand and appreciate that our priorities are for that middle class and those aspiring to be a part of it. And our policies demonstrate that very clearly. My question to the member is specifically in regards to, as I've indicated, the international treaties, the $444 million. These are tangible actions that have been taken in order to deal with the issue of tax avoidance, and I'm wondering if the member can provide some of her thoughts with respect to those two provisions or those two actions that the government has taken. Would she not agree that that is a step forward?
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and through you I would appreciate the opportunity to answer the question of the member. The reality is, for people of North Island Powell River who work hard every day, they're not seeing the changes that they need to see. They want to see proper investment in their communities, in infrastructure, making sure that all of that aging infrastructure is actually cared for, so that we can also see those jobs coming into our communities. They're very concerned about this cash for access that they're seeing, where people with a lot of money are suddenly getting opportunities. They want to know that this government is on their side, and they're not seeing that, because the reality is this so-called middle-class tax break does not include people unless they make $45,000 or more. And I can tell you that's a small amount of money that they'll be getting. We want to see people who are struggling every day, working minimum wage jobs, getting the support that they need. And it's about seniors as well that are facing multiple challenges. They can't afford their medication. We're signing deals that make sure that their medication costs are going to go up. And when is it going to end? Those costs are going down onto the people who need the most help, while the people who make the most are getting away with tax evasion. Shame on the government for not doing their job.
And comments, questions et commentaires, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm especially happy to hear one of my colleagues from the NDP talking about this, because sometimes the Bloc Québécois feels like it is alone in such fights in the past. For example, to her questions, I asked a question as follows. In Quebec, we fight against tax evasion in certain ways, and when we see such messages and when we give amnesty to KPMG, the message that is sent to those who want to circumvent the system is that if you circumvent it, give it a go. It's perfectly fine. If we catch you, you don't even need to pay a fine. All you have to do is reimburse the amount, and so give it a go. And if we catch you, we catch you. And if we don't catch you, you keep your money. That is the federal government's point of view. What we propose is a new methodology pursuant to which the second investigation is created. It is sent to Revenu Québec so that they can enter litigation to get its money if the federal Canadian government doesn't want to. I asked questions to the NDP. I did not get an answer. I don't know if the word Quebec scares you, but what do you think of this?
For North Island, Powell River.
Well, Madam Speaker, I thank the member for the question, and through you, I hope to answer it to the best of my ability. You know, I think what we're talking about is something so important, which is, are we all paying our fair share? And if we're not paying our fair share, what is the recourse to addressing that issue? And what we're seeing is people negotiating internally, people with a lot of resources, a lot of wealth, saying, hey, if I get caught breaking the rules, I just have to reimburse this, I don't have to pay a fine. When you look at the reality of everyday Canadians who are working so hard just to save up to pay for their kids' braces, just to save up to pay for their kids' education, hoping that when their kids get bigger, they can afford a pair of shoes. These are everyday Canadian realities. And then we have the very wealthy not paying their fair share, not being held accountable, and those resources not going into making sure that they are held accountable for when they cheat the system. We need to see this government step up. We need to see actual action, and we need to see some movement, because it is only right that we protect the Canadians that struggle the most.
Resuming debate.